So moving on to the shirt, let's get the model prepped for the work on the shirt. So I think the first thing that we need to do is to extend the edge of her neck down a little bit. You can see in our turn drawings we've got this line right here, and that's going to define her neckline for her shirt. So we just need to extend the geometry of her neck down below that. So let's grab that, hit Z for Edge Extend tool, and then right click, and then just pull that down a little bit. Gonna hit Y to give us a scale tool, and let's go with a selection action center, and we're just gonna sort of approximate what that shape's gonna look like. Let's see, maybe move it up and back a little bit, just sort of tweak this into place. Alright, Z again, and then just move it down and scale it. So something like that. Now we're not going to build the body, we're not going to build her skin underneath here, we're only going to build the shirt. So it's my opinion that unless the project demands it or requires it, you only build what you need to build. Let me just maximize this viewport and let's have a look at what we're going to do. So similar to the face, where we had these landmarks of the nose and the mouth, there's really no difference in terms of modeling with what we're going to do with the shirt, because we'll have landmarks. They're just going to be different. Let's just take a look. So her shirt is going to have like a little scoop in the front. It's going to come out here, and we're going to have a little seam right here, and then we'll have a seam down here, and then of course the sleeves will come off of that. So when you're constructing, in this case, a shirt, with regard to topology, what we want to do, like we did with the nose and the mouth and the landmarks of the face, we have landmarks on the shirt that we need to adhere to. So one of those landmarks is going to be the shoulder area. So right here is going to be the seam for her shirt, and then of course we're going to have a collar. And so the topology that we lay down is going to need to follow, again, this edge along the seam, and then this edge along the collar. Alright, so it might look something like this. Well, we'll have an edge come up here like this. We'll have an edge that defines or holds the shape on the shoulder, and then the topology on the shoulder might come down like this, and then it'll break to come down straight. Alright, so it might look something like this. Alright, and then these will go across, because once we get to the field of this shirt, we want to have this topology as even as we can get it, all the way down, vertically and horizontally. Alright, and then the sleeve, of course, was just going to come down, and that's going to be real simple to do. Alright, so let's do that. Let's get started. And what I like to do first is to start with a primitive shape, and we're basically a cylinder around the neck and a cylinder around the shoulder. So let's start with a primitive. Let's hit N first for a new mesh layer. Go to our primitives, and 12 I'm going to start with on the shoulder. Now I'm in symmetry. I'm just going to undo that. I only like to work, or typically like to work on just half of the model. It's just less for me to keep up with. I'm going to go with 12 sides. Make sure that this is oriented on the x-axis, and just going to resize it, basically just to sort of rough fit this. Something like that. Use multiple viewports to sort of establish, just to sort of establish a rough position of what we want. Alright, spacebar to drop the tool, and then hit Y. We're going to rotate this roughly into place of where this seam of the shoulder is going to be. Okay, and this is going to just serve as sort of a placeholder for the arm. We're going to get to that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and loop slice this with just one, it'll give you something to work with. Because what we want to do is to integrate this loop into the body, or the main part of her shirt here. And this loop is going to be dedicated, it's going to help, it's going to be the starting point for her sleeve. Alright, so we're just going to leave that in place right there. I don't need those polygons, so I'll select those and hit delete. Alright, we're going to build another primitive for her neck. This one's going to be 24 sides. Alright, so I'm just going to click and drag this out. Make sure it's oriented on the Y this time, and approximate the shape of this. Now it's not going to be completely, it's not going to be a complete circle, but it will be elliptical. I'm just going to rough this in, and let's just change this viewport to wireframe so I can see a little bit better. Something like that. Spacebar to drop the tool. Automatic Action Center. Make sure we have just this one selected, and then hit Y. And I'm going to orient that to approximate that line on the collar. Something like that. Alright, let's just move this up a little bit and shorten. Ooh. Selection Action Center. Move that up. And then we'll take it and then move it back just a little bit. So we've got some room to play with. Probably bring it down a touch. Alright, I'm going to select that polygon on the bottom. I'm just going to scale that out a little bit to give us a little bit of a flare. Okay, and that's the start, going to be the start of the collar. That looks pretty good. Select that and that one, and then just hit delete. Now I want to center this collar up. I may have drawn that out in the center, but most likely it needs to be a little bit of adjusting. So I'm just going to hit center selected on the X. It looks like we're in good shape. So now when we work in symmetry, we'll be in good shape. If we want to work in symmetry. But I just like to start off that way. Alright, so now again, going with the plan of what we had to have polygons flowing where we want them, just select these four edges at the top, because we want to keep some evenness on the top of our sleeve, on the bottom, on the front and the back. So select those edges, hit Z. We're just going to right click and then just extend those out, and then again use our multiple viewports to approximate this shape. Now I think in the turn drawings her shoulders are a little high. They don't look as relaxed as I want them, so I'll probably wind up moving this down a little bit. So let's go ahead and just sort of move this down. Still going to keep the angle of that seam right there, but I think her shoulders are a little high. Let's find the center of, we're only going to work on half of this collar. Alright, so I'm going to find the center. I'm just going to delete half of that so it's easier to keep up with. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so that's half, that front half. We can see that we're in pretty good alignment in terms of these polygons with these polygons, and we're going to bring those together. Alright, so we can do that. We can do that easily with the bridge tool. So make sure that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the center. We'll go 2 to the front, 2 to the back. Alright, so that's what we're talking about. Alright, and then just run the bridge tool and then click and drag. Alright, that looks pretty good. You can see there's some overlap on the back. That's going to bother me, so let's just turn symmetry on. And we'll just move that back down just a little bit, just to get it out of our way. This is the start of this loop that's going to come around the front and the back. And the back is going to be basically a mirror of the front. So we'll just use the same sort of strategy for the back. Alright, so we're going to do it another edge extend. I'm going to select those edges right there, hit Z, then right click, and then just sort of pull this down. Oop, we're in symmetry. Let's turn symmetry off. I'm going to hit Z again, pull it down again. You can see I'm looking down here. Let's attach this up. So we know that that's going to tie into that. So with the drag weld tool, we can just pull that together. Alright, we're going to have another row of polygons that's going to go here. Let's do the back while we're thinking about it. Z for the edge extend tool, right click, and just pull that down. Don't worry about lining the center up. We can do that pretty easily in just a minute. Alright, so that's going to be one edge. Z, again, pull that down. Something like that. Drag weld tool, just pull that together. And then let's just tweak this a little bit. Pull this over. We're going to tweak this a lot, but sometimes it's helpful to tweak as you go to give these edges of this polyflow around here a little more clear direction. We can do the same with here. Let's just use a different method. So we'll fill this polygon in. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that order. Hit P. And what I mean is that you don't want to select this one, then that one, then that one, then that one. It's going to give you a twisted polygon. So just go around. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then hit P. I'm going to move that edge line up a little bit. So now this is the start of the shirt topology going downward. Alright, so let's grab all of these now and then hit Z and extend those down just a touch, because this edge is going to come into that little point. So let's pull those together. Alright, so with those two selected, let's go to join averaged, and that works. Do the same in the back. Z, pull that down, maybe a little bit over. Grab those two polygons, or those 2 points, and then just, let's see, join averaged. Alright, that looks good. So let's just massage this into place a little bit better. And if you can't grab that, if you're having some difficulty grabbing a point, just switch to the element move tool or change your viewport, to kind of zoom in or change the perspective a little bit to get a good vantage point. Looking good. Let's continue on. Now this time I'm going to make a little bit bigger move with the edge extend tool, and I'm just going to extend it straight down all the way to the bottom. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to see if I can match it up down here. Now, I'm not too concerned right now with volume, like of her breast area or the volume of her chest or rib cage. I just want to get some topology in there. So we'll do the same with this back. Hit Z, and then again just extend this down using our multiple viewports to get us oriented right. Now we need to cut this up a little bit. We're going to do it in parts. So Alt-C with a couple of polygons selected in that row, and then Alt-C here, something like that. I want to take these 4 polygons here and pull those down, just so that I'll be even on the top and the bottom. Alright, so Z is going to pull us down, and then just help to position ourselves something like that. It's a little bit off, but that's alright. We can get that back pretty quickly. Select those 2 end pieces, and then we're just going to join average, bring that together nicely. Select this one and that one, and then join average there. Okay, and so now let's hit C. We're going to cut these polygons over here. Oh, there's some little bit of weirdness right here, and I think it's because this edge and this edge, we'll just take those out temporarily. Alright, so let's a couple of edges along that line, along this row. Alt C. That's going to work for us a lot better. Okay, so you can see we reestablished that edge right there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and cut this up a little bit more. So like 5, maybe in a uniform way. Maybe 6. What we've got, now we need to shape this, of course, but let's just take a look at the topology that we have. So we've got a row of polygons around the neck. We've got a row of polygons that's going to curve around the sleeve. It's going to help define that sleeve. And we can bring this over a little bit too. So maybe we can do that right now. So let's just take a couple of these, and then right click on that line, go to slide, and then just pull that into the shirt area a little bit and fill in that part. Let's do the same, or maybe just sort of pull this down a little bit. Alright, we're going to tweak this more with our sculpt tool and create this sort of seam area right along here. This is going to be kind of a transitional area, rather. Smooth. It's real boxy right now, so let's just smooth this out a little bit. Get some volume. Sort of pushing and pulling. It's kind of the process. So let's grab that edge. Now I want to bring that edge back up here to this seam line. I sort of lost it when I pulled over this one. So let's just fix that. And then with a selection action center, we can scale that to give us more of a straight edge across there. Alright, and then let's just move it down to make it look, bring it back in line with this silhouette across the top of the shoulder, and then just sort of bring this back a little bit so that it's in line across here. Grab this, the Y key, it's going to scale that flat, and then pull that down just a touch. Alright, we're just going to leave that right there. Do something with it later when we get to the sleeves. Just get it in a good neutral position. Alright, and that's pretty good. Alright, so we've got a seam. We've got polyflow around here. Actually, I need to move this edge down a little bit tight right there. So let's just move that down. It's going to make me feel a little bit better about it. Okay, so going back to the drawing, if you hit select a couple polygons and hit L, you'll see that we've got this loop around the neck. Okay, and that kind of echoes this loop around the collar, which is exactly what we want. We've got a loop around the sleeve, or the top part of the shoulder, around the seam area. this seam, and that's good. We can tighten this up, we can tighten this up, and we can tighten the neck up. In the field of the shirt, we've got more or less evenly distributed polygons, which is a really good thing to have. So the next thing we're going to do is to sort of massage these points into place. Make sure nothing's selected if you're going to use the move tool. And can't get it with the move tool, so let's just go with the T with the element move tool. Alright, I'm going to sort of just eyeball this into place right now to get the silhouette correct. And then we'll go back and sort of fine tune. But basically I'm happy with the, it's a little bit rough, but I have the geometry in there that I need. And it's not really heavy geometry, it's more or less evenly distributed. So I can push and pull points using the smooth tool like this to help with that. Sort of get this to a point where it's balanced and evenly distributed. Somewhat. And then we can go back and tweak as we like. Alright, but so we've reached our goal really of getting this polygon flow around here and around the sleeve. So let me just show you what we're going to do. Let's just line this up because this is not going to be in the middle. So it's going to grow that with the up arrow, that selection. Okay, and then we'll go to the back, do the same, grow that up like that. And then we'll go to set position. So under vertex set position, we're going to set position to 0 in the X. You'll see those lines jump over, those edges jump over. Okay, so we know that those edges are centered. All right, then hit Shift V, and we're going to mirror that over. So now we have a better idea of what that shirt's going to look like. So let's turn symmetry on. And sort of work on her breast area, get the volume established here. And this is real rough. Now I prefer to work in low polygon mode, like a raw polygon mode like this, just so I can see the shapes a little bit better, the size of the polygons, and the subdivision surfaces don't trick me. So I tend to work like this. Now I'll hit Tab to see what it's going to look like, but generally I like to work like this. Now I'm going to go about shaping it and then come back to you and we'll take a look at more or less the finished model of the shirt, or maybe it'll be closer at that point. Alright, so now that you've taken some time to balance out the topology, just want to show you a couple of things that I did. I want to point out that we still have our loops around here. You can see that I've moved it down a little bit. I've added at least one more row here. I've added a few more rows of polygons across the body here. And that's just so that when you start to move things around to position the topology with regard to the form, the structure, the underlying anatomy that we know is there, polygons are going to stretch, and so you sort of have to make some decisions about adding topology here, an edge loop here, an edge loop there. Try to keep things simple though. Don't just subdivide the whole thing and then work from that. All of your additions should be intentional, it should have a reason. Let me just show you. We have our edge loop around there, which we've retained. We have our collar and then a couple of supporting edge loops around here. So across the back too, you can see that loop comes around here. We have that loop around here. We're in pretty good shape. All these polygons are balanced. They're not all equal, but that's not so critical. Just as long as it's clean. We're sort of checking the reference drawings as we go along to do it. So now let's turn our attention to the collar. We want to bring this, sort of fit this a little bit better. So let's do that. Let's grab this one and grab this one, double clicking, and then we don't need symmetry on right here, so let's turn that off. And then hit the arc button, scale those in just a little bit, and then we'll move them down with the selection action center, just so it sits proud of that skin that's underneath there. Double click on that top loop, maybe we'll scale that in a little bit, move it down, something like that. Alright, now I want to create a little bit of a lip here, a little bit, a small little bit of material, so it's not just completely thin. So what I'll do, select that loop around there, then hit P, select that polygon, we're going to bevel that, so hit B, then right click, drag that little arrow, that little red square, so we create this little bit of a thickness to the material, or that's what we're going to do. Alright, going to shift click, which reactivates the tool, and we're just going to push this down just a little bit, something like that. Maybe scale it out slightly, and then just hit delete. Alright, so we have this little collar started right here. Let's fine tune this a little bit so it's a little bit more believable. Now it's going to be covered up with this little scarf, that's what this is, but we still want to have it there should we make a decision to remove the scarf or to move the scarf somewhere where we're actually seeing that collar. So with two polygons selected in that row, hit Alt-C, and the mode is going to be free. Actually, let's go with a symmetry, a count of 3. That's going to give us one cut in the middle, and then see if I drag left or right, I'm going to position these two edges, this edge and this edge, equally between that polygon that we cut. Let's grab this one. I'm going to push that in a little bit, so push tool, and then just click and drag, and then double click this one and double click that one, and we're going to push it out slightly. So when we hit tab, you can see that there's starting to be a subtle little lip there. Let's define that a little bit more. Alright, so Alt-C. This time we're just going to go a mode of free so we can control the placement and bring it up to about there. Notice I'm not going all the way to the edge. Hit tab and you can see that we're still getting, or it's not quite there yet, but it's a good start. And that might be good enough. Or we could tighten that up just a little bit more. Right click and hit slide. And then just sort of drag that a little closer. Okay. So I think that's good enough for now. Later we might want to tweak that a little bit more, tighten it up. But for now I think we're good. Alright, let's go back over here to the seam of our shirt. We have this loop here, and we can tighten this up too. So you can see that right along this edge is the seam. Alright, so Alt-C, and let's just tighten that seam up a little bit, something like that. And we can do it in this side, on this side too. I'm going to hold off doing that right now. I'm going to go ahead and extend the sleeve down a little bit. No, I think I will tighten that up right now. Maybe Alt-C. And then we'll maybe do it again, Alt-C. And then maybe one more over here. Alright. I'm going to grab that one in the middle, and then we're just going to push that in a little bit. So push tool, click and drag here. You can see we have the start of a little seam right there. Now that might be a little bit too wide, so we can just move that in a little bit. So clicking that edge, hit the slide tool, and then just sort of move that over a little bit, and tweak that over a little bit. Do the same with these supporting edges. And that gives the topology a little bit, it's a little bit tighter. Okay, so that I think that looks a little bit better. And of course, if we needed to add or delete from, we can still do that because we have these convenient edge loops around here. Let's pull the sleeve out and continue on. Alright, so let's just hit the move tool. I'm just going to be a little bit more aggressive about this and pull this down here to the edge of the sleeve. And then with a selection action center, just try and get the angle of that little sleeve. And I like the way that looks, but I want to build it a little more narrow. And I can always flare this out a little bit. So, alright, so that's a good starting point. And because we used a primitive cylinder to start with, we do have pretty much even spans all the way around. Okay, so that's good. Let's chop this up a little bit. We're going to create the outer and the outer shirt and the inner shirt out of the same geometry. Alt-C to get our edge loop in there. Actually, let's do it like this. Let's just delete that out, and then let's hit Shift-C, and then come up to an isometric viewport, and then slice that across there. Okay, so that gives us a little bit more accurate of an edge right there where that edge of the sleeve is. So let's bevel that line, the edge. So hit B for bevel, and then the edge shape, that's set to round. That's good. Let's see what we've got, and just click and drag that out in the viewport. That's too many edges, so maybe one. I think that'll be good. Alright, so let's grab those two polygons, hit L, and then we're just going to scale this up to create the volume of this outer sleeve. We're going to be a little bit conservative about how that flares too, but something like that will do nicely. Select that edge. Selection action center, just going to pull that back in here for the time being. And you can elect to either connect this geometry or to make it, this lower sleeve separate geometry from the upper sleeve. So let's cut this up something like this, and then just select that loop and move. Well, that's not quite what I want to do. That edge, that's what I want. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to tighten that up, tighten this edge up. Alright, so Alt-C, there we go. Something like that. Alright, so now let's grab that loop and let's just move this up slightly into the shirt. We might scale it in a little bit just to give us a little bit more breathing room should we want to get up in there. Alright, something like that. So Alt-C again. Let's go with maybe a uniform mode. Let's see what that does for us. That looks pretty good. And I'm basing how many loop slices I cut or I use based on generally the size of the polygons that I've already established. Alright, and we'll do the same down here. So Alt-C, and maybe let's go with 8. Something like that. Maybe you don't need to go crazy, but something like that. I think that'll be good enough for us to start with. I just want to take that out, and right now we have a selection action center of a selection action center. So let's hit R. Just going to scale that flat, and that gives us a good starting point. So now those are across. Let's hit P. Just going to fill that polygon in, and then let's create a loop, some thickness rather, to that material. Bevel that in. Shift click reactivates the tool, and then just pull that in nicely, and then we'll just delete that out. Alright, so let's clean up the edge. Let's make this a little bit more finished. Alt C, and we're going to move this down to free mode, and this is going to be kind of the hem line right there, and let's tighten this up. So Alt C, come up like this, and then just double click on that loop, and we can either scale it or push it. I like to push that, so we can push that up a little bit, and then here Alt C will tighten that hem line up a little bit, so you can see that we've got a little bit of a flare. Alright, it's real subtle, but it's a little bit more refined and finished than what we started with. Alright, so let's clean up this edge up here, just tighten that up a little bit more. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We're going to leave that alone, and we need to clean up the bottom of the edge of the shirt. So let's do the same method. I think first I'm going to double click on that. I can see right now I should have been working in symmetry, but that's alright. We'll take that opportunity to show you how to flip that over. Alright, so we have this selected. Let's go to raw polygon mode and hit P. Alright, so we've got this. Let's hit B for bevel. Bevel that in about the thickness that we've been using. Not so critical, but just give yourself a little bit to work with. Shift click, pull in that blue arrow, push that back a little bit. Spacebar to drop the tool, and then delete that polygon. Let's tighten up the inside. We can do that. Doesn't have to be in a particular order that we cut this up. Alright, so that kind of finishes that off. Now let's go with a slightly different method to create this hem around here. We could Alt C, add a loop slice across here, but we may not get an even distribution or even polygons by doing that. So we're going to slide this. So with that edge selected, going to right click and hit slide. But over here in the properties, we're going to duplicate, but instead of percentage, we're going to go with the distance. That's going to give us an equal distance from where we're sliding from. So this distance here is going to be the same distance as it is back here. Alright, just kind of create a clean loop around there. So Alt C. Here we're going to tighten up this hemline. Here, grab that. Actually, let me go ahead and I'm going to put another one in here. So I'm going to 2 polygons along that same row. Alt C. Select that. I'm going to push that in just a little bit. So push it down just slightly. Double click that one, and then push that out. Okay, so we hit Tab. We can see the subdivided mesh. You can see that little bit of a loop right there. Alright, it's subtle, but it's there. So you pull back a little bit, it catches the light a little bit more. Looks a little bit more finished, a little bit more polished. So now let's go back and address this problem, this oversight on my part. It happens often when you get into a project. You forget you're in symmetry or you're not in symmetry. But let me show you how easy it is to fix. We're happy with this over here, but we forgot to do this arm. Alright, so let's just maximize this viewport. Go to a front view, select half of the mesh. Okay, so we can tell that it's half of it's selected right here. I'm just going to delete that. And then this edge is lined up, which it should be, but we can always check that. Let's just hide our inactive meshes and select all the points or edges along that center line, and then go to vertex to set position on the X, hit OK. Then just hit Shift V to mirror this over and hit apply, and we're good to go.